What up, y'all? So I decided against my will and against the need to sleep that I have to wake up in the morning and work. I'm going to get this video out before I get into my dungeon of hell work for probably a month to whenever Slashback starts, because I'm literally just working basically straight through to the most part to my knowledge right now. I have one day off, and that one day off is actually doing taxes. Like even that one day off is in more than a week. So I decided I should do this video first because it's that important. And I think with me talking about offense right now, this is probably the most important video I can get out. So this is about adaptation and is going to land in nuance. The reason why it's going to be in nuance and not in offense, not in any of the other categories that you're expecting it to probably land or it having its own category. The thing with adaptation is that adaptation mostly, and I mean mostly, comes from me breaking down a proverb that I've already talked about, which is "you don't fucking matter." That proverb gets broken down into three rules that I normally teach, which is look at your opponent, look at the screen, don't run into stupid shit. All three of these are actually super nuanced. They're not as straightforward as you think. And for offense specifically, adaptation comes from looking at your opponent 85 to 90% of the time. I mean that legitimately. That is the main thing for you to use to actually adapt to your opponent. You don't need to sit there and consider your resources and all the extra things that come from the screen as much as you need to truly understand what looking at your opponent and all the information from your opponent can give you if you properly apply it to what you're doing. So I'm going to have videos on all three of these, but I wanted to get this one out now because it matters so much to offense, and this is going to be a longer video. So I am actually taking my time at midnight to record this. And this will be as long as it needs to for me to showcase it. I'm not going to showcase too many matches in this, but the problem is with the matches I'm showcasing, you're going to see how much adaptation is really being showcased in just two matches that is super fast. Like it is way faster than normal standards. Like it is crazy to think of how fast that this is. I'd like to say this is both these players not in their prime, but once they were like actually super grinding the game, not playing as casual as they do now, where the adaptation is just so fast is actually near ridiculous. And a lot of it does come straight from just looking at your opponent and understanding what they're introducing to you. But this lands in nuance because just because they introduce something and you can adapt to it doesn't mean you do. The same is vice versa, where it's like just because you don't decide to adapt ever doesn't mean you shouldn't have adapted. There's many different cases to this. So, getting more into the video before I start playing it, that was my mini lecture prior. This is Persona. So, as if you're not familiar with this ranked screen, because of the fact that no one plays ranked in Persona in America. So, the thing about ranked in Japan is that it had a very active point prior to rollback, where they were playing super active on ranked. And so, this is where they were still fresh out of the arcade, still traveling to the arcade before it kind of died off to a degree. They still have Maxim out there, I think, for Persona right now. But this was G and Waka playing. If you do not know both players, Ji-san is one of the pillars of Chie in Japan, and Waka is one of the pillars of Naoto in Japan. Both players have been playing since actual P4 vanilla. Like P4 actual A, not P4AU, which is what's commonly known in America, because was Persona 4 Arena, the ultimate Moyonaka Arena, is the one that's public to like public launch. There was a version prior as a playtest that we actually had for a pretty long, decent while. I'm one of the few players from America that's played it. I don't recommend it ever, but I'm one of the few players that played it. And these two players have been around since the beginning, always playing. Um, with that, there's a sort of familiarity to them playing against each other where they treat each other in a certain way, but at the same time, in there's other things you can see in this set that are clear adaptations to what is actively being presented, and I'm here to highlight those. So let's finally get into it because I expect this to be kind of long. So these two games are back to back. I'm not skipping anything, but the way I'm going to showcase this is that I'm going to pause at key points in the initial run, and for the most part, I'm going to let it play through, but I need to pause at certain key points that highlight in just this match for the first match. Then I'm going to go back on the replay and explain why they were key points and etc. on top of talking about stuff that factors into the next match once Waka adapts. Like this DP. This DP is super important to this game. It is so important to the game, it's actually kind of wild for the rest of this game. So that is just from this DP being introduced. And if you're paying attention, you're going to see how fast the adaptation for you. That 2B anti-air is also super. Both of those moments, quickly introduced, not much, are two of the most important things in just this match. I mean that sincerely. I have shown this video to multiple people where usually when people are asking me what adaptation looks like, I will do a personal VOD review of this after doing a VOD review with them to show them this. Because this set, in my opinion, is one of the best for adaptation, period. It is literally, if you want to understand what adaptation looks like, especially actively, this is the best set to watch. There's way more to this video. This video is actually like a 4-hour long video from G, but just these two games alone showcase so much where it's like, it's crazy. And just the fact that I've only paused on 2 interactions, and if you're paying attention, just these 2 interactions are kind of crazy of understanding how fast someone adapts. Like, man, like I always have like a fear once I watch this set because of the fact that it's like, hey, this is just one of those sets where it's like going back to it gives you a refresher on why fighting games are so good. Like, genuinely gives such a refresher on why fighting games are so good once you like actually understand how fighting games work. Also, for those that play Persona and hate Shadow Naoto, I don't get your beef. I will probably have a Persona-related video that will not be attached to the Conceptual Yap about it at some point, but, like, I do not get your beef with Shadow characters, especially once you understand the nuance behind resourcing. And I will have a different video again on resources that is not just the reward sourcing and what is a resource, but understanding how to process looking at resources, which might come in the looking at the screen video. I will decide how that works. Alright, let's get into the talking about it part, because there's so much that happened in just a set, and I'm just gonna back key to go back. So, first off, already off the rip, and I didn't talk about it in the first part of this game. Make sure that I'm still on time where I need to be. So, at the start of the game, and I didn't talk about it because I don't want to highlight it in this, but for the next match, this round start from Waka is very important. Actually, it does happen in this match, but it's more important for Waka what happens after this round. I did not highlight this round start, but I am going to talk about this round start once we get back to the next round. So this was a very important round start for G to C. Even though the outcome that I will say will happen in the next round was not in G's favor, thanks to timing, and I will specifically talk about timing once we get to that. This important round start mattered. But let's get into the other stuff that actually mattered, and let's talk about actual fast adaptation. A reminder, I said this DP is important. So the big thing about Naoto's DP is that even with follow-ups, depending on how you structure your pressure, you can bait the follow-ups. She has the backdash, which you see here. She has two different forward shots. She has one that's basically a shotgun blast that hits almost everything in the immediate area, and Chie's lucky case she can low profile it. And then she has a shot that goes across the screen, which most characters in the game can. But the thing is, with it being a counter first, there's unlike Chie's DP, which is an auto proc counter, where it's auto proc in the follow ups. She has to choose her follow ups from Naoto. The most common follow up you're going to see from Naoto is going to be the shotgun shot, because that's going to be the immediate get off me tool. But from seeing this DP and the way it interacted, already turned into let's structure pressure to bait it. Because the thing is, unlike most characters, with the way Chie vacuums and the way Chie's 5-8 interacts, plus her jump cancels, if you watch my cancel video on talking about cancels, she can structure to bait this in unique ways that other characters can't naturally because of her frame data on top of her cancel. Like, again, I want to say that her 5-8 is definitely not negative. I feel like it's actually plus because of the way it works. And this is one of those few reasons why it kind of showcases that, because the fact that I know for sure Waka was immediately saying, "Get off me" here, where this DP was probably a fuzzy, and it was probably fuzzy DP. It probably should have came out slightly earlier if it wasn't for TA frame data, but like this was immediately baited. Like immediately. Like it was like literally was introduced and immediately baited. And it wasn't like it happened once. Like it happens multiple times throughout this. The same way you see this 2B, and this matters to the rounds going forward from this. Right? And we're gonna highlight that as soon as we get to the next round. Rolls out, man, let's bait another DP. Because we're just at this point, G is just assuming Waka's trying to use DP as defense, because that's the only two defensive tools Waka has introduced have been DP and 2B. 5A has not been pressed, 2A has not been pressed. Nothing else has been pressed besides DP and 2B. Like, so literally, that was just the first round, and I don't remember the time calculation for seconds and Persona off top. I'd like to say they're probably like 1.4 to the actual second, but like, it's only been 43 seconds. Like 43 seconds, and adaptation has gone that quick. The same way that round start, remember I just said, right? So this is actually an attempt to bait that round start, because that is the same round start Waka did at the beginning. I will even go back one more time for it. Right. Airbag does JD. So the super jump JA is to check if Waka super jumps into him. So immediately to check that, and it's also the safe whiff button. I talked about this in movement of having safe whiff buttons on also understanding your non-committal pokes, which might have been a separate video, but I was talking about it in both, where it's like, so we're safe whiffing a button, and then we're chasing to sit there, and the JC was to attempt to punish the JD. That is such a quick adaptation from seeing a round start once. It is kind of insane. Like, you saw a round start once and just assumed that, hey, it's either you're going to now press me or you're going to do the same round start because airbag this JD from Naoto is one of the safest round starts she can do. It's safer than anything because of the fact that it puts her completely out of the way of round start and also checks round start distance and farther while backing off to not fully commit and get into her zoning range. Because the thing about Naoto is that Naoto, in most effective case of her range, plays between range 3 to range 1. And if you have a supreme life lead and you're playing trap heavy, that's once you get past range 3. And just from that round start in the first round, immediately was trying to chase it. But because they missed on timing and it should have been really, they should have pressed J2B and not JC, they got punished for it. Even though they were the first to adapt and try to immediately punish that round start. We're baiting anti-airs. That is what that cross up is for. So the thing about Naoto's 2B. Naoto's 2B is actually super stubby. Like, I mean, super stubby. It even though it feels like it hits everything, that is usually just hurtbox interaction because of the fact that all 2Bs are anti-airs. So if you don't have something that is basically no property, or if it has any type of aerial property to it, her 2B will clear it and she'll just beat you. So using this cross up, which is a very forced cross up at that, this is to scout out the anti-air, clear over it, and bait it because of the fact that it actually is so stubby. And you're going to see that more than just this once in this, on top of other ways to bait the anti-air. Crazy. Because now you can't 2B on wake up, because now we're crossing up to also bait DP and make sure you can't 2B on wake up. So now we're covering both options. But unfortunately, because was not prepared for the hit, got anti-aired anyway. Punch. A lot of trades. My bad. We're clearing over your anti-air again. Which is what, again, this is what the delayed air dash and the cross-up air dash is for. It's for beating the anti-air. And it's crazy how fast G introduced that. Because it was literally just like, I saw you anti-air me once, and now I'm just gonna not let you anti-air me again. So, sorry, I was taking a drink real quick. But this was now an alternative round start bait to the JD for the B punch, because B punch is so active on top of the fact that with hitting persona in personas, if you hit a persona while in the middle of being active, it extends your active frame. So this was to extend active frames and still punish Waka, but again, missed time, so now lost their turn because of the fact that Waka didn't actually commit, so there was no active frame extension that was going to happen. Trades do be like that. Now, this is where, for this portion of the set, especially from beginning of this round start, this is where we talk about why this is a nuance, and sometimes you should have adapted. Because now we are over committing to trying to get in through the zoning harder than G actually needs. One thing that I say to people that are playing against zoners or any type of keep away character is that the thing about playing keep away, and if for those that have watched the channel longer than just the Conceptual app series and have been around the block to know videos I've done in the past, I play Yuzu, I play Lambda, I know how to play many archetypes of character in fighting game. The big thing that a zoner or a keep away character wants is for you to be greedy. And I will have a whole separate video on being greedy. Where if you're too greedy, you're too overzealous, and you are way too focused on trying to hit the keep away character, they are going to get the most mileage out of it. The more desperate you appear to play, and the more mileage they're going to get. And that is what is showcased from this round start on until G enters caution slash guts. Or awakening, my bad. Like awakening. Too many games, too much terminology. Like, G is being so desperate here to try to hit Waka that it is now leading to Waka getting so much value because of the fact that G is overcommitting. And didn't adapt to playing slower until now. And now, this is where we go back into G's immediate adaptations that kind of signed the set off for Waka was going to lose it. Because Waka has not counter-adapted to the adaptations like this 2B bait, which I know you cannot see the 2B because it's off screen, but this was a persona sacrifice to beat 2B. Legitimately existed to beat 2B as an anti-air. Like, that is just crazy. Like, I don't do this to people. Like, this is just a level of mind game fuckery that is just beyond comprehension. Where it's like, now, it's like, I am baiting your anti-air, and because of the fact that you thought that you had time, I can just follow down with a safe, faster button than what you can probably press. You can't, it's a safe jump for J2B there. So it's a safe jump that will beat your DP on top of the fact that you can't anti-air because you're not going to have the time. Right? Like, and this is the only spot you could burst, so I'm just going to one more burst your burst. That's the only point you could burst. That's just one game. Like, that's literally how fast the adaptations have happened in just that one game. Is pretty insane, and it flips to Waka's side now, where there are things introduced that Waka didn't immediately adapt to, but the thing is, in this next game that's coming up, Waka does adapt to. And I'm going to take a pause to highlight those, not where I'm going to scroll back, but I'm going to tell you what they are. The main thing is the aggression, and especially the usage of B punch, or B Herculean strike, for those that don't know it as the colloquial term that makes it easier. Like, the way you adapt to 214B is usually you sweep it or you play outside of its range, because it doesn't actually hit my bad. It doesn't actually hit full screen. It travels 2/3 of it is what I'd like to say, if not 3/4. It's like, it's a very long distance, but it's not full distance. So in Naoto's case, with traps and all that extra stuff, as long as the traps are not super close to Chie, that the ending animation of B punch, traps are fine. But the thing is, it does actually go over traps because traps are considered a projectile. So there's two ways to play around it, where it's like you use it as bait, where you set a trap, hope they B punch, and you try to low profile it because B punch is chess property and you can sweep it. Or you sit there and space specifically to try to bait them into, they do B punch, but they land into the end of the trap, so they get punished at the end when there's no more projectile involved. I don't remember how long it gets since there we go. It's actually pretty cool. So now we're doing a different safe round start from Waka's end, where instead of doing the JD, we're now doing air dash back JB, which would actually here catch the tail end of B punch. So this is adaptation to B punch. A round start, because this is a call out for it. delayed shot. This was an adaptation to the DP base. So one, this is a very unique case where one, Chie can't bait the DP there on 2D to begin with, but just the reaction alone to delay the follow-up is actually an adaptation because now you're soft scouting to see if you got baited, which can now, in Naoto's case specifically, because of the fact that she gets to choose her follow-ups to using her counter, makes it so you can make different decisions based off of seeing if you did get scouted and quote unquote read for it or not. Also, if you're seeing the one major adaptation is that the aggression is being countered by a different sense of aggression from Waka. Waka was playing super reserved in the first game, and that actually kind of led to Waka's downfall. Random Does Games, who is one of the prominent normal Naoto players in PFC, we had a conversation about how I feel about the matchup. And the main thing I feel about this matchup is that if you are not actually pressing buttons at me, you are losing this matchup if you're playing Naoto. Only because of the fact that Chie is such an ignorant character, which actually kind of goes into the cancels video that I talked about the other day too, because I was kind of showing how ignorant she is when it comes to her offense. She is so ignorant with projectile invo, throw invo, and all armor, etc. She has every single thing in her kit. There's at least one move that does it in her kit. So instead of trying to play the zoning game where I have random tools to just beat out your tools to check you for using your tools, specifically in the cases of zoning and stuff like that, if you try to play the footsie's fisticuff game with Chie, you are now putting yourself in a position where I now have to deal with the fact that your normals, for the most part, outrange Chie. And that was the approach that Waka did for adaptation, where it's like you're seeing more 2Cs, you're seeing 5B, you're seeing all of these buttons that actually check buttons. Like I'm using specifically B ricochet shot, which is off the ground, to check your jump. Because as G has used jump ins, especially if you saw all the times he got clipped by trap. I've been paid attention to that in the prior game. Where it's like checking jump ins with ricochet shot, which actually can also be follow up to this. If you manage to block it, I can do other things to make it safe. Where it's like now we're playing more of a fisticuff game instead of playing the I'm a zoner, I gotta zone you. Can't 2B. One thing that, and I'll say this even now, this is the one thing that is a problem with Waka that I don't think gets introduced and talked about enough. Waka is very greedy for anti-air. That is the one problem with Waka's play. Waka is super greedy for anti-air. And it shows in this set because of the fact that G is abusing it so much. I will quickly mention it just because of the fact that this was a bait. Problem is the timing, but this does beat burst. This was actually a burst scout. It was just too early. Remember I said using a trap as bait to sit there and use something else to sit there and punish the B punch? This was the case of that. And now, instead of zoning in the traditional form, we're playing the keep away was, oh, let me just try to stay at the full screen sense. Now, Waka's placing traps or doing things actively post this burst and playing a different game with them where it's like playing around ranges. And this is one thing that once I get into playstyles and understanding certain playstyles, because that's something I do want to talk about of why you can lean to certain playstyles, even regardless of what your character archetype is. There are reasons to do certain things regardless. And for zoners or keep away characters, movement is actually more important, in my opinion, than actually what your zoning kit is. Because of the fact that instead of traditional pressure, because of the fact that you are playing the keep away game in zoning, a lot of your gaps or the illusion of what I was talking about, stagger pressure in the prior vid, comes from you playing around your ranges and making you seem that you are interacting with the character more than you actually are. And that is what Waka is showcasing here, where now there's a whole bunch of weird interaction happening because of the fact that instead of just straight, let me stay at the other side of the screen, there's a lot of capitalization off of what's actually happening. Tried to bait the 2B, but didn't get the air turn. So unfortunately, you got hit. And again, ignorant character, projectile invul, throw invul, move, it's multiple times. Ignorant. Adaptation to the 2C round start. Remember that? That also happened in this round. Remember that? Start of this round. Remember this button that got pressed literally at round start. Wow. Instead of just letting him press 2C, which checks funny enough, Naoto's 2C is a round start. I'm just gonna run up on you and hit you. Fortunately, as much as that was a was trying to bait the 2B there, this is the problem that I was saying earlier about trying to interact with this button. So once you do moves that actually put you in the air like this, especially once they have a persona, the anti-air is normally going to win. You can use this to bait anti-airs, but like an anti-air case like this, where she gets so low to the ground, and now it turns more into a hurt box interaction than is actually like the anti-air being an anti-air, you're just gonna lose. Like, I remember this turns into like a very awkward trade fest and a whole bunch of drops. Nice air throw. Forgot about the trap because we're just being too overzealous and we really feel we got to hit the character. We apparently forgot about the trap that got placed on the screen right in front of their face. What are we doing? Sorry, I had the cough first. Did you notice the round start? You went back. Now the B punch was basically an attempt to bait the 2C bait. So now it's a different check. Like, so sometimes you adapt, sometimes you don't. Like there's like you're playing the game. Like that is adaptation. You are playing a game where it's like this 2C, I mean that JC actually does beat 2B there. Because of the fact that this, I'm gonna go back slightly farther and try to pause it slightly earlier. This would be before you're in contact with your 2B. So if 2B was pressed here, unlike this 2C that was pressed, this Chie is going to whiff, not make contact with the 2B, and basically bait the 2B. Still playing around that game. But because of 2C being pressed and 2C being immediately followed up in the bullets, because if you hit something, does not matter if it's actually a physical hit or not, you can still cancel. So tried to cancel on the gun to save himself, but that actually led into getting hit. Playing around 2C's range now because 2C was introduced to the option. Still spacing to deal with 2B. Like, this is the adaptation game. Don't be greedy. This was the greediest thing possible in all of this because this has got kind of into a scramble territory where, yeah, Waka has the life lead, but the thing is, you're still playing as like they have the life lead and the resource lead now because of the fact that you're one hit away from dying, which is what happens here. Let alone it's burst safe in this case, so it couldn't even burst. But like with a character that's volatile that can do this based off of their fate resource, it's like you can't be overzealous and greedy and desperate because of the fact that this is what will get you killed. And that's where, in G's case, not adapting and immediately starting to say, I need to play slower against the zoning and being so greedy and so overzealous and the I need to hit you now is what led to this loss. Like, because now, with you playing so greedy and Waka adapting to all of the greed you're showcasing, now get killed by fate. So that is why I'm saying out of the three rules, adaptation really comes from looking at your opponent. Because go back as much as you need to in this video to see what I'm talking about, but it's like literally from something being introduced, adaptation happened on both sides. That is literally as simple as the set goes. Like they saw something introduced, then they started catering to it slightly. And now you don't need to hard bait cater the things. Please keep that in mind. I will talk further on that in offensive structure as an actual offensive thing because especially it got brought up today when someone asked me about it, something in Persona. But like the goal is not to sit there and try to go for all these outlandish reads, right? Reads will only carry you so far, and that also means with hard reads, and there's a difference between hard reads and structured pressure reads slash soft reads where it's like you doing hard reads, that also means that you're usually giving up something in the process of doing it, where you can structure yourself to cater to that. And I think structuring yourself to cater to that, which I kind of soft talked about in the last video, is way better than you going for hard reads. The same way you have to also understand you are playing into the resource game, which is something I will also get further into in offense once I talk about resourcing, once I actually talk about on hit reward and understanding on hit reward and other reward in fighting game. Because instead of just leaving that in reward sourcing, the big thing is that you need to understand how reward actually interacts with the game, which is why look at the screen matters. And I can structure that into offense. The third rule, that's going to be a nuanced topic that I'll get in at some point because that rule is more catered to understanding when to break it and understanding how that plays in. And there's certain characters I can talk about and setups that play into that. Like for Persona, for example, as we have in the screen, Ken plays into that. Once you truly understand the Ken matchup and you get to test if the Ken is good or not, understanding when to get hit by Ken is actually more important than anything else. The same way with like certain unblockable setups, like Melty has unblockables, right? Where Vaki has an unblockable where she sets up a projectile that's air unblockable, and then she also has a command grab that you have to hold. Well, the thing is, you take the command grab, that also gives your health back and takes a lot of your health, or you take their unblockable. You take their unblockable, right? It's like understanding when to break that rule. That is where that rule comes into play. So I will talk about all these, but since we're doing the offensive section, it's very important for me to talk about this. And that is why I wanted to take the time to do this, not in a private setting, but now officially as a public setting. So there's a couple of sets that I will have as a future note that I will take time like this to record it and like go over it because I find those sets one some of the best sets in fighting games where you see active things in a fighting game that you have to pay attention to on top of like some of them highlight specific points like this. Like one thing that I'm going to definitely talk about and it is probably going to go towards conditioning, but we'll see where I put that video. There will be another Persona set, courtesy of Jordal, that I actually never knew got recorded until he posted it. And I went over that set with MBM because that was one of the few sets where seeing that in person was kind of wild. But it's like one of those sets where it's like, damn, son, this is a set. Like this is a set. Like, and there's so few sets I can say that, or where it's like I feel like people are truly playing fighting games in a very unique way, where it's like this is what draws people into playing fighting games. Get this deep. But other than that, this has been 40 minutes of my time at midnight, and I really need to go to sleep for work tomorrow. So I'm gonna say later, y'all. I'll probably drop this video in the morning, even though I'm talking about it as when I'm recording it. I will probably drop it in the morning, and I'll start uploading it before I go to work. Later, y'all.